Okay, let's see, does this thing work? Thank you everybody for being here, especially near the end of the day. Thank you for sticking around. We've got a really good crowd here. I'm joined here by Joanna Cotar, member of the German Parliament. Joanna, let's start off with introductions. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I was born in Romania. I came to Germany when I was 5 years old. I studied politics, so I actually study what I'm doing right now. I was elected into the German Parliament 2017. I was a digital spokesperson for my party in the Parliament. And I decided to leave my party in 2022 just because it changed. It wasn't the liberal Freedom Party anymore I joined. And now I'm an independent MP in the German Parliament, and it's the best thing that could happen to me. And I'm of the opinion we need many more independent members of Parliament who are not under the pressure of their own party and can make their own decisions.
Amazing. Really quickly, I'm the co-founder, co-executive director of the Bitcoin Policy Institute. We're a think tank that researches Bitcoin. We advise members of Congress in the U.S., other policymakers on Bitcoin, emerging digital assets. Joanna, why don't you give us a quick lay of the land of basically German government, who are some of the different parties, and you mentioned you're now an independent. Maybe tell us a little bit about why you moved away from your party and some of the benefits and drawbacks that come with that.
Yeah, well, in Germany right now we have a government everybody hates. There are 0 to 3% who wants this government to continue. The reason is because we have the Social Party, the Liberal Party and the Green Party forming the government at the moment. And they have nothing in common. They fight all the time. And if you watch the news and follow Germany a little bit, you see the decline we are on it. It's not only the private persons who are leaving Germany, it's our companies, our industry leaving Germany because of the high electricity prices, because of the high taxes. And yeah, everybody hopes that will be changed next year for the next election. We will see. It's hard to see the change in Germany because we will just get other parties. And to be honest, all parties are the same. It doesn't matter which party is elected. The system is broken. And as long as we don't change the system, we won't get the real change we need in Germany and I think in a lot of Western worlds we have right now.
So you mentioned, the system is fundamentally broken. I think a lot of people in the audience here would agree that for a large portion of society, the money is broken, right?
Yeah.
So this is kind of the natural segue into Bitcoin. Can you tell us, because you are a pro-Bitcoin politician, you've come out publicly, right? You're not just saying this behind the scenes or behind closed doors. Can you tell us a little bit about essentially your Bitcoin origin story, right? How did you first find out about Bitcoin? What about it appeals to you? And then how do you go from, hey, this is interesting technology, I think this is good, to I'm going to make this part of my political agenda. I'm going to speak out very publicly about this as a member of parliament.
Yeah. Well, I went into politics because I was fighting for freedom. I was born under the Ceausescu regime in Romania and under communism, and I know what it's like to not have freedom. And I knew that our money system is broken. I knew that printing money isn't the solution. But I didn't have the solution right back then. And my brother once told me, 2013, if you have any money left you don't need, invest in Bitcoin. It can go the wrong side, it can be hugely successful. He invested, I didn't. I still regret it today. But then I watched a video about the Austrian School of Economics combined with Bitcoin. And it was like the aha moment for me. It was like, that's the solution I was looking for. And then I tried to push Bitcoin within my party, and I wasn't successful. And after I left my party and I was an independent, I can now push topics which are dear to my heart in German public, in the parliament. And that's why I created the initiative Bitcoin in Bundestag, Bitcoin in the parliament, in order to educate my fellow MPs about Bitcoin. Because the biggest problem is they are not informed or they are misinformed. They see Bitcoin as a climate killer, they see Bitcoin as something used by terrorists, money laundering, and that's something we want to change. We have a website, we have a newsletter, we have monthly events in the German Bundestag where we invite Bitcoin experts to explain to my colleagues what Bitcoin is really about.
So you mentioned there's an information problem here, or an education problem. There seem to be two schools of thought here. Some people believe that, hey, members of government, they know what Bitcoin is. They're scared of it. They recognize it's going to, in some iterations, take power away from a government that is continually printing money. And then other people take the approach that it's an information or education issue, that most members of government don't even know enough about Bitcoin to really have an opinion on it. So where do you fall? Do you think it's a little bit of both? Do you think that regardless of party, people can actually come around to Bitcoin?
I think in Germany it's really the lack of knowledge. That's what I got to know by talking to my colleagues. I talked a lot to the green politicians, said, hey, we have an energy crisis. You want to change energy in Germany. You want to be dependent on sun and wind. And we have to pay a lot of money if we have too much wind and too much electricity for other countries to take our electricity, to take our energy. Why not use Bitcoin mining? Why not harvest this excess energy and make money out of it? They don't know that. So you have to educate them, you have to inform them that this is a possibility. They need to listen. That's a hard thing, but politics is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So it takes time, but I think eventually they'll come around. I mean, Bitcoin has something to offer for every party. You have the Green Party with the energy, you have the leftist party with human rights, with the developing countries, you have the liberal parties with the topic of freedom. There is something for everybody in the topic of Bitcoin. They just have to know what they're talking about.
So we've got to address it. Earlier this year, a lot of people were really upset about certain actions from German government. Without knowing the exact figures, I believe it was right below 50,000 Bitcoin had been seized by the German government, and due to what I believe was in policy, in law, right, these seized assets, they were forced to sell, or they chose to sell. And this is hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin that the German government had in their possession and ultimately chose to sell. Now, this comes on the heels of what I would say is we're witnessing a global race for Bitcoin in many ways. We have multiple presidential candidates in the United States who are talking about Bitcoin stockpiles or strategic Bitcoin reserves. You have the Bitcoin ETFs in the United States, in Hong Kong, in Abu Dhabi, right? Like there seems to be kind of a growing consensus, even if not everybody's on the same page about Bitcoin, that hey, it's probably good to have some of this, right? Even if I don't know anything about it or I don't love it, it's probably good just to have a bunch of this on the side. And then the German government had a bunch of it and they sold. So can you talk a little bit about this? Why did this happen? What are some of your thoughts?
It wasn't the German government, it was the Saxony, the county of Germany, who had the money because they seized it. And it's the law in Germany that you have to sell these kind of things if they lose value in a very short time. So if you, for example, seize cars, then you have to sell them fast. And Bitcoin, unfortunately, falls into this category in Germany. There is the chance that Bitcoin loses value, so we have to sell it, and that's what they did. They seized the Bitcoin in January. They sold in summer. So the politicians had enough time to come together and change this law. If you have no idea what Bitcoin is and why it is valuable, and you see all America and all the other countries talking about it, and you don't have a clue, just invite the experts. Let them advise you how to do it. And they had enough time to change this law and to get Bitcoin out of it. I actually wrote a letter to the Chancellor Scholz, and I wrote a letter to our finance minister and to the minister of Saxony and told them, stop it. Stop it. Please sit together and find another solution. They didn't even answer. So it's still a long way to go in Germany, but that's what we're used to. Maybe not only in Germany, but in the European Union. We are scared of things, And it takes a lot more time in Germany to accept certain changes and digital innovations because we always see the risks first. How can we regulate it? Can we ban it? How can we protect it? Or protect us. And when you look at the United States or other countries, it's like, wow, that's an opportunity. Let's grab it. That's the difference. And that's why we're always behind. Look at the payment industry, MasterCard, Visa, PayPal, all American. The platform industry, Google, X, Facebook, all American. Nothing from Germany, nothing from the European Union. We need to change that. We need to open up. We need to see the chances first and grab them.
So it sounds like in some ways, yeah. That's amazing. It sounds like in some ways this is a chicken or the egg problem in the sense of if you have a culture that doesn't necessarily value innovation or prioritize innovation, then it's never going to come. Bitcoin is maybe an opportunity to reverse this, right? Where if the German government decides this is a priority for us, this is an asset, this is a strategic opportunity, it sounds like you think that this could potentially be a headwind for much more innovation down the road. It's almost a signal to the country, hey, we're reversing course, we're switching things up.
Yeah, we're changing for the better for the future.
Yeah.
I mean, look at El Salvador, what's happening in El Salvador, how many bright people El Salvador attracts to the country, how many businesses are going now to El Salvador because they embrace Bitcoin and said, okay, we're taking the chance. And that's something we need in our countries to say, okay, let's bring the brightest people to us, let's have economic growth, let's have more independence, decentralization, get rid of the central banks, get rid of the money prestige system. It's a long way, but I'm still optimistic that we can do it, but it's important that people get involved. It can't be only a few of us telling them what to do. We need a huge community to get involved.
Definitely. I want to come back to that in a moment. I think that the El Salvador piece I think it's important to talk about the overarching story of El Salvador and not just numbers on a spreadsheet. Is Bitcoin worth more than when they bought it or worth less, right? We saw a lot of media in the year following El Salvador adopting Bitcoin, adopting it as legal tender, buying tens, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. When that price went down, you saw a bunch of articles characterizing it as a huge mistake, right? And saying, see, we told you so. This was never going to work, right? Why would you ever think this would work? But I think you hit on ultimately these second-order effects, these externalities that help tell a broader story. And to me, what is the real story is that it's not just the dollar figures. It's what is the signal to this country? What is the signal to people around the world? And it says this small developing country, we are open for business, right? We are open for innovation. Hey, you might know us for our crime statistics, and now you know us for something else, right? And now, there's a reason to come here, to do business here, to engage in commerce, to engage in exchange of ideas. And so I think that's the part that gets lost, and it's something that we have to really push back on. And this goes to your point of how we can get involved, how we can get engaged. At the Bitcoin Policy Institute, a lot of our work is pushing back against misinformation or, again, telling a more complete story, right? It's our belief that the Bitcoin facts speak for themselves, that over time, people have continued to be proven right about this technology, and that you don't have to lie or fabricate or make up statistics in order for this to, the thesis to play out. But could you talk a little bit more about this idea of engagement? Right? Because it can be really frustrating when you're talking to people who come from an entirely different worldview from you, who maybe haven't, to your point, listened to some lectures on Austrian economics or gone down some of these rabbit holes. So you're starting here, they're starting here. How do you bridge that divide? How do you meet somebody in the middle?
Well, first of all, you have to start talking to them. You have to go out there and tell them about Bitcoin, about your ideas, about what we are losing at the moment. And I think the chances now are much bigger than a couple of years ago, because everybody sees we have problems. In nearly all of our Western countries, we see that our freedom is taken away from us. The freedom of speech, or when we looked at the COVID crisis, what happened there? Our basic rights were taken away from us. So I think there are many more people now open to this topic of freedom, to this topic of Bitcoin. And for me, Bitcoin is the freedom tool. For me, Bitcoin is the freedom currency, which comes with it, with a lot of advantages, but this is the main thing. So you have to talk to them. And what I say in Germany is always, you have to talk to politicians. The one thing politicians want, they want to be re-elected. And when you go out to the politicians and tell them, hey, you get my vote, but I have a topic which is important and dear to my heart, and if you look after that and if you do something about it, you'll get my vote. Then they start to listen. You need to go and talk to your politicians. And I have a lot of German Bitcoiners who do that already, who make appointments with their MP, because they all have their offices in the county, and they go there and say, hey, what's your thought about Bitcoin? And then I have some colleagues who say, well, I have no idea. Then they go, no problem, I'm coming back in 4 weeks. You have 4 weeks to update yourself, to inform yourself. That's the way you have to put pressure on the people who decide what's going on in your country. And I know many Bitcoiners don't care about politics. A lot of Bitcoiners don't vote because they say, I have Bitcoin and I don't need all of this. And yes, if you are someone who's very deep into the rabbit hole, if you're a nerd, you're totally capable of dealing with a Bitcoin ban or when they're making it illegal. But we want a broad adoption of Bitcoin. We want everybody to use it. So we need to keep governments from regulating to death, from making it illegal, from making it hard for Bitcoiners to use Bitcoin. And that's our responsibility to raise our voices to stop that, because that's the way they're going at the moment in the European Union. How can we regulate? They spend, I think, 600,000 euros to prove that Bitcoin is bad for the climate. That's what the European Union is doing at the moment. So please, stand up, raise your voices, talk to your politicians and say, stop it.
There's a lot of good stuff in there. One is this idea of personal autonomy, self-sovereignty, right? At the end of the day, everybody in here has the ability to talk to one of their members of Congress or member of Parliament or their local MP, whatever it is, right? This is something that we started the Bitcoin Policy Institute a few years ago, and we came at it from, we were Bitcoin first, right? We were a bunch of basically Bitcoin nerds, right? And a bunch of brilliant academics teaching at universities all around the country, around the world. And we knew a lot about Bitcoin, and we knew some people that knew a little bit about the political process, but we hadn't figured out how to merge those worlds yet. And what we realized was, oh, you can just send someone an email. You can just pop into someone's office. You can just call a phone number.
Yeah.
And if you do that over and over enough, and most importantly, if you present yourself well and you know what you're talking about, you provide them with good information, not only will you be able to get meetings, but you can actually have a real impact.
Yeah.
And I think the second piece of what you're talking about that I think is really important is your members of Parliament, of Congress, your government, they don't know what's important until you tell them it's important, right? So can you talk a little bit about, you are the member of government, you have to deal with your constituents' issues. How do you decide what to prioritize, and how can that be, relevant or useful for people here when you're saying, hey, go out and do something?
Yeah, that's one of the problems. You have so many topics on your table when you're in the parliament, and you're usually responsible for one small part of politics, like I was for digital politics in the Bundestag. And you don't have the capacity to look into every law which is decided, even the laws we vote on. Most of the time, most of the parliament members have no idea about the votes they're voting on, because the speaker for this kind of topic tells them yes or no. And that's how we vote in the German parliament, even worse in the European Union in Brussels. It's just someone tells us how to vote. So it is important then, when the topic of Bitcoin comes up, that there are a couple of members of parliament in each party. I want to have an orange block in each party represented in the German parliament, that when the topic of Bitcoin comes up, they raise their hands and they say, well, we know what you talk about. Please let us handle that. Because we have like the conservatives in Germany who try to basically make it illegal or impossible to use Bitcoin. And when we establish a small orange block in this party, this won't happen. But they have to realize that it's a topic. They have to realize that it is important and that they have to talk about it. Otherwise, it's just like, it's Bitcoin, it's dangerous, it's used by Hamas, let's vote against it. Yes, let's vote against it. So they need to be informed and to say, no, we heard something different. And I think that's why the initiative is so important in the Bundestag, because they hear something different from us. We have topics like energy, we have the human rights, and they know Bitcoin is something good for everybody. And yeah, it all comes down to knowledge and information. It all comes down to educating the people. And as far as I go, I think it's important to teach children in school about economy, about the fiat system, about Bitcoin. And I see teachers starting to do that all over the world. I see that in Germany, that they're starting to teach children that. And that's so important. That's how you get all this fear, this German angst. You can, with education and information, you can get rid of it.
Yep. At the end of the day, you don't know what you don't know, and you need somebody to sometimes wave in your face or, put something in front of you and say, hey, this is important. Maybe you didn't know about it. Let's start from zero.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it backstage, about the election in the United States. Everybody's looking at the election, seeing, well, if Trump gets elected, will he keep his promises and really push Bitcoin? I think if the United States starts and buys Bitcoin as a strategic reserve or something like that, then I think all the European countries, with a little bit of delay, they will get FOMO. They will get the fear of missing out. So there's a lot of pressure now on the American colleagues here to do something about it, because it's always the states who start first. And so maybe that has an impact, because otherwise it will take a long time in Germany to change it.
So as we're wrapping up here, I think that's a great segue into, at the end of the day, this panel is titled How Bitcoin Will Transform National Economies. That was a joke. How Bitcoin will transform national economies, right? And ultimately what you're getting at is, okay, Bitcoiners might not care about politics or politicians, but it's going to have a significant impact on Bitcoin's price, on how many people use Bitcoin, and I think most importantly, Bitcoin users in certain jurisdictions, right? So even if you don't care about politics or politicians, right, like people people you care about, your ability to use Bitcoin in the way that you want to use it, that is impacted by this.
Yeah.
But you touched on the strategic Bitcoin reserves, the stockpiles, and kind of this cascading or domino effect that can come from it. What do you see as, like, what is your transformative vision for Bitcoin, right? Because governments can buy it, right? And you can buy a bunch of Bitcoin. How does that, well, one, does that help people? Does that help everybody in this room? Or does it just make people richer, right? Like, what is your personal belief on an ideal vision for the future of Bitcoin? How do you think it can transform Germany or the broader world?
Well, I think with the right Bitcoin strategy, you really have the potential to transform a nation. And yes, of course, buying Bitcoin and holding it as a strategic reserve is something good. People using Bitcoin is something. It fights inflation. I mean, can't wrap my head around it that the ECB, the central bank, says 2% inflation is okay. That's stealing money from the people every month. That's not okay. And Bitcoin is going to fix this. So this is something very important, the basic freedom rights for people, getting the sovereignty back as an individual, not depending on the government, not depending on the banks. That's something, being free as an individual, that's something dear to my heart, really, to fight for that. And if you look over our borders. I mean, we are still in a privileged position, even we have crises in our countries. But look at Africa, look at the developing countries. The financial inclusion you get from Bitcoin, the economic sovereignty you get from Bitcoin. There are so many aspects why Bitcoin is good for the world. We just need to see it, and we just need to tell people.
Amazing. We've got a minute left. Before we get off here, I want to applaud you. A lot of politicians will talk the talk, right? You are walking the walk, right? You've come here from another country to speak on this. You are taking a personal and professional risk being early to these types of conversations. So just want to thank you for being here and being one of the people who doesn't just talk about something, but is actually willing to take actions based on what they believe in. And with the final few seconds here, do you have any final thoughts? Any last words you want to leave for these people? It's the end of the day. Like, what's one takeaway you want them to have from this conversation?
Get active. Do something. If you have a topic which you really care about, do something about it. I went into politics because I thought we need change. I can't sit on my sofa and say, I need change. I need to do something about it. So if you want to see change, go out there and do something about it and create the change you want to see.
Amazing. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Is your company ready for the next evolution in financial strategy? Bitcoin for Corporations is your partner in securing the future of your business. With exclusive membership benefits, our comprehensive masterclass, and a network of trusted service providers, we provide the insights and resources to help you incorporate Bitcoin into your financial strategy, ensuring stability and long-term value. Strengthen your business. Innovate with confidence. Bitcoin for Corporations, protecting your treasury and positioning you for the future.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here at the Bitcoin Magazine news desk at Bitcoin Amsterdam 2024. I am Frank Korver, the business and political correspondent for Bitcoin Magazine, joined by Julian Linegar, founder and CEO of Relay. So, Julian, we were just listening to Joanna Cotar, member of parliament in Germany, talk about how we have to engage with civil society. We have to follow the laws. And I know that you've done a lot in terms of regulation and going through all the sort of steps you have to go through with paperwork to get your app approved in all of the jurisdictions in which you get people to Bitcoin to. Why did you take these steps?
Well, it's in the end a necessary evil, right? I think for us Bitcoiners, most of us are more like libertarian, and we maybe don't, like everything that governments are doing, and like legal compliance is probably for a tech entrepreneur, not like the thing that you want to prioritize, but you have to. If you want to get to mass adoption, if you bring these both old and new worlds together, right, you just need to talk to the politicians, to the regulators. If you want to expand, there is just no way to do it without politicians like Joanna. I loved how she phrased it as like the Bitcoin community, if they want it or not, if they like it or not, they need to kind of integrate with society as it is now, and it's very dominated by governments and politicians, and especially in the fintech kind of entrepreneurial tech space and finance space, it's just highly regulated. There will be no way how they will just let us do all the crazy things like the cypherpunk visions that we have. So we need to somehow find the perfect balance to integrate with that old world.
Right, and I think, there's space for that cypherpunk space, but there's also space for people who are doing it like you're doing, bringing it to the average person, right? Making Bitcoin easy to get through an app like Relay, which I think is really important, and we need that across the spectrum, right?
Exactly, and what we try to find is this balance. We try to be as true true to the Bitcoin kind of idealistic values and principles as possible. That's why we're all about Bitcoin only. That's where we're adopting scaling solutions like Lightning. That's why we are as decentralized, as peer-to-peer, as self-custodial as possible.
Right?
That's all the things that are very important to us, but at the same time we somehow have to integrate with the regulations so that we can expand and reach as many people as possible. That's, for example, the reason why we're now doing KYC.
Julian, if you don't mind if I cut you, I apologize.
Sure,
As you guys can hear, it's wild in here. We got bulls running around the arena. We're kicking it back to the main stage again. I'm here with Julian Lineker of Relay. We'll be back after this.
Is your company ready for the next evolution in financial strategy? Bitcoin for Corporations is your partner in securing the future of your business. With exclusive membership benefits, our comprehensive masterclass, and a network of trusted service providers, we provide the insights and resources to help you incorporate Bitcoin into your financial strategy, ensuring stability and long-term value. Strengthen your business. Innovate with confidence. Bitcoin for Corporations, protecting your treasury and positioning you for the future.